There's a 401k mistake that can quietly cost you thousands of dollars before retirement. And the frustrating part is that you can make this mistake while doing almost everything else right. You can contribute every paycheck. You can have hundreds of thousands of dollars invested. You can even feel like you're finally on track, and still make one decision that can seriously hurt your retirement plan. The mistake isn't necessarily choosing the wrong stock. It isn't necessarily having the wrong fund. And it isn't about whether you should have a 401k in the first place. It's much simpler than that. And once you understand it, you'll probably look at your own 401k differently. Imagine a 55-year-old American named David. David has been working for the same company for more than 20 years. Every paycheck, money goes into his 401k. He rarely touches it. He doesn't trade. He doesn't chase the latest stock. And over the years, his account has grown to around $450,000. David feels pretty good, and he should. He's done something most people struggle to do. He's consistently invested for decades, but now retirement is getting closer. Suddenly, that $450,000 doesn't look like an abstract number anymore. It starts feeling like, this is my retirement. And that's when David makes a decision. He looks at the market. He sees headlines about another potential crash. He remembers what happened during previous downturns, and he thinks, I'm too close to retirement to take this kind of risk. So he moves a large portion of his 401k into investments that feel safer. At first, it feels like the responsible thing to do. He's protecting his money. He's reducing risk. He's finally being careful. But there's a problem. And it's a problem that many people don't discover until they are already retired. Here's the mistake: confusing less risk with no risk. This is one of the most important ideas to understand as retirement gets closer. Because there are actually two different risks you're dealing with. There's the risk of losing money during a market decline. But there's also the risk of your money not growing enough to support the retirement you expected. And those two risks can pull you in completely opposite directions. When you're 30, a market decline can feel painful, but you potentially have decades to recover. When you're 55, the situation is different, but that doesn't automatically mean get out of the market. Instead, it means your investment strategy needs to account for a much more important question. How long does this money need to last? Because retirement doesn't begin the day you stop working. It may be the beginning of a 20, 25, or even 30-year period when your portfolio still needs to support you. And that's where this gets interesting. Think about what happens when you retire. You stop receiving a paycheck, but your expenses don't stop. You still need housing, food insurance, transportation, healthcare, taxes, and everything else life throws at you. So your 401k doesn't suddenly become a pile of money that you can simply protect forever. It has a job. Its job is to help fund your life. And that creates a strange retirement paradox. You want enough growth to keep up with inflation and support decades of withdrawals. But you also don't want a major market decline to destroy your confidence or your ability to pay your bills. So what should you do? This is where many people make the mistake of looking for a simple answer. Stocks are risky, or bonds are safe, or just move everything into cash. But retirement isn't that simple. Let's imagine another investor. We'll call her Sarah. Sarah retires with $500,000 in her retirement accounts. She's proud of that number. But now she has a problem. Sarah needs her portfolio to last. If she keeps everything extremely conservative, she may reduce short-term volatility. But over a long retirement, there's another problem. Her money still needs to grow. And this is where something called inflation risk becomes important. Imagine Sarah retires at 65. Her money needs to support her not just at 65. It may need to support her at potentially even longer. The question isn't simply, how do I avoid losing money this year? The better question is, how do I manage my money so it has a reasonable chance of supporting me for the rest of my life? That's a completely different question. Here's where I want you to pay attention. A lot of people think retirement investing has two phases. working to investing then, retirement to stop investing. But that's not really how it works. Retirement is not the end of investing. It's a transition from accumulation to distribution. Before retirement, you're primarily putting money into the portfolio. After retirement, you're potentially taking money out. That changes the math. And it means one of the biggest mistakes isn't simply, I invested too aggressively, or I invested too conservatively. The deeper mistake is never having a plan for what the 401k is supposed to do once the paycheck stops. Imagine you're 5 years away from retirement. Instead of asking, which investment is safest? Start with, what does this money need to accomplish? How much income will you need? How much will come from Social Security? Do you have other retirement income? How much will you actually withdraw from your portfolio? Which expenses are essential? Which expenses are flexible? And most importantly, how much of your portfolio might you need during a market downturn? Because that's when the real danger can appear. Imagine Sarah retires with $500,000. Then the market drops significantly. Her portfolio falls. She's watching the number on the screen get smaller. At the same time, she needs money for living expenses. Now fear enters the picture. She thinks, I can't afford for this account to fall any further. So she sells. Now something potentially damaging has happened. She's no longer simply experiencing a temporary decline. She's turning that decline into a permanent reduction in the amount of money invested. And if the market later recovers, she may not participate fully in that recovery. This is why retirement planning isn't just about picking investments. It's about creating a system that allows you to stay invested through uncomfortable periods without being forced into emotional decisions. One way people think about this problem is by separating money according to when they expect to need it. For example, money needed soon may be kept in more stable places. Money that isn't needed for many years can potentially have more exposure to long-term growth assets. The exact allocation depends on the person. There's no universal percentage that works for everyone, but the principle is powerful. Don't put money you need tomorrow into a strategy designed for decades from now. And don't automatically assume that money you might need 20 years from now should be treated exactly like money you need next month. Your timeline matters. But there's another mistake I want to talk about. And this one happens while people are still working. They contribute to their 401k, but they never increase the contribution when their income increases. Think about someone who starts contributing a fixed amount at age 30. 10 years later, they're earning significantly more, but their contribution hasn't changed. Their lifestyle expanded, their income expanded, but their retirement savings didn't expand at the same pace. This is where automatic increases can become powerful. Instead of relying on willpower, you can build a system where your retirement contribution gradually increases as your income grows. The point isn't to make yourself miserable today. It's to prevent your future self from discovering that your lifestyle grew faster than your retirement savings. Here's something else I want you to remember. You don't need the perfect 401k. You don't need to predict the next market crash. You don't need to find the perfect investment every year. You don't need to constantly move money around. In fact, constantly changing your strategy can become its own problem. The goal is to create a retirement system that is simple enough to follow, diversified enough for your situation, and disciplined enough to survive bad markets. That's much more important than finding the investment that looks best this month. And now, we get to the mistake that's even bigger than all of these. Waiting too long to make a retirement plan. Because your 401k balance by itself doesn't tell you whether you're ready. Someone with $700,000 could feel completely comfortable. Someone else with $700,000 could feel terrified. Why? Because retirement isn't determined by the account balance alone. It's determined by the relationship between your assets, your income, your spending, your timeline, and how long your money needs to last. That's why asking, is $500,000 enough? Doesn't really have one universal answer. The better question is, enough for what? So if you're approaching retirement, don't panic. Don't suddenly move everything because of one scary headline. And don't assume you need to make a dramatic change simply because retirement is getting closer. Instead, start with these questions. Number 1. How much will I actually need each month? Number 2. How much reliable income will I have outside my portfolio? Number 3. How much of my 401k will I need to withdraw? Number 4. What happens if the market falls shortly after I retire? And finally, number 5. Do I have a plan that allows me to stay invested without being forced to sell at the worst possible time? Those questions are much more useful than simply asking, should I be in stocks or bonds? Your 401k isn't just an account. It's a machine you're building to replace some of the income your paycheck provides today. And the closer you get to retirement, the more important it becomes to understand what that machine is actually supposed to do. The biggest mistake isn't necessarily choosing one bad investment. It isn't necessarily having too much money in stocks. And it isn't necessarily having too much money in safer investments. The biggest mistake is reaching retirement without understanding how your portfolio, your income, your spending, and your time horizon are supposed to work together. Because you don't want to spend 30 years building your retirement account, only to spend the first year of retirement wondering what you're supposed to do with it. So if you're still working, don't wait until retirement is 6 months away to figure this out. Start looking at the plan now. And if you're already approaching retirement, remember, you don't need to predict the future. You need a strategy that can survive the future you can't predict. That's the real goal, not perfection, not timing the market, not finding the next big investment. Just building a retirement plan strong enough to keep working when the headlines get scary. And if you want to understand another number that can completely change the way you think about retirement, watch the next video. Because reaching $500,000 in your 401k isn't the end of the story. For many investors, that's when the math starts getting really interesting. Subscribe to Wealth Decoding for more simple retirement and investing lessons.